be grateful for every opportunity that comes your way to learn something new.
Yeah.
I think that we think we have to have arrived, and none of us have. Like, we're still learning. And I think that's kind of the misconception is like, when I get there, then I will have had it all figured out.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that it's like, no, when you get there, you're just going to have a whole new set of challenges that you have to learn. Yeah. But if you can, approach life like a learner, like a student. Another one of my favorite proverbs is, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
In this special edition of the Hope and Hairspray podcast, Kelly sits down with one of our many entrepreneurs that we have the privilege of working with. They share real stories that we know will inspire you. Enjoy.
Reneé Deckrow entered the entrepreneurial scene in 1999 as the co-founder of Captured Productions. Then in 2016, founded Live Oak Coffeehouse in Midland, Michigan. Reneé's entrepreneurial journey is filled with passion for people and their development. Thanks for joining us, Reneé.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So when we were designing this podcast, talking about confessions of a female entrepreneur, stories of fear, failure, and fortitude, you were at the top of the list because your genuineness in sharing what it's like when you're an entrepreneur, because it can be so lonely, right? We feel like we have to, everything's good and we're doing great. And that's such a disservice. So I love, you have inspired me. You're always there to encourage. And I think our listeners are really going to value talking and listening to all of your journey through those different phases. So what sparked your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. So mine is a little bit more of a winding path to it.
Okay.
I would say it wasn't necessarily something, from a young child that I thought I would ever do.
Okay.
In fact, most of the things I've done is always kind of that, like, I can't believe I'm doing this because I wouldn't consider myself brave or a risk taker, which are two really, good traits for an entrepreneur.
Sure.
For me, I would say that, in 1999, when we were starting the videography company, it was a little bit more of my husband's kind of thing. Like it was something that he wanted to do, and I joined him in it, which I'm very happy
Naturally.
I'm very happy to play a supportive role. I really actually most comfortable there. But as we were going along, I definitely discovered, that I do love photography. I've always been a photographer since junior high. I was actually started on the yearbook staff, learned in a dark room.
No way.
Yeah, so I shot on original film. Yeah, so
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I've just something that I've always been. So when we were able to add that to the video production company, that was where kind of probably the spark really began.
Okay.
But it wasn't easy for me. It wasn't easy at all. So
What part?
The business part.
Okay.
So again, an entrepreneur should know business, but we didn't. I was more of an artist, creative. And so for me, it was, and really for both of us, we spent a good 10 years learning business as a kind of need to know, right? So as we were developing our skill sets and our craft, right, you realize, there's a lot more to business than just doing something really well, right?
Right, sure.
And so we really spent a long time. We were also juggling, he has a career, and I was juggling being a stay-at-home mom. I have 4 little kids, So
That's
we're
a
just
lot.
kind of, juggling a lot of things at the same time. But we'd spend our evenings, like after the kids went to bed, like I would, spend it learning. And so I kind of look at that as my university time. And I really look at those first 10 years really as going to school to learn how to be an entrepreneur.
Okay.
So we devoured books on business. We devoured books on, obviously the craft of, photography and videography. We would attend workshops. We listened to books a lot. Every time we were driving somewhere, we would listen to them.
Great time.
Yeah, because we didn't have a lot of time. So we really had to be, intentional about our time.
We're in the car. We have a half hour.
Exactly. Yep.
Right.
Yep. Try to use it. And, learning marketing, learning taxes, learning finances, right? There's just so much stuff that you don't know. And also leadership. So at that same time in our lives, we were being asked to be small group leaders, within our church. And if you know the book Fish Out of Water, that's how we felt about leadership. Neither of us feel like natural born leaders.
Really?
Yeah, but we're very motivated by solving problems and filling needs. So there's a robots movie that we love, our family loves it. It's kind of our family motto, and it talks about see a need, fill a need. And so for us, the next chapters of our journey were all a response to some problem we saw in the world or some need that we are filling. And
I love that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've heard a lot from business speakers is nothing is worse like walking around with a solution in your pocket to no problem. And you already had that. You could already grasp that. There is a problem. Oh, what can I do to fill that?
Yeah.
So what came next in that pathway? I see all these stepping stones for you.
Yeah. So in 2010, we were looking to find a studio outside of our home. And so we after looking around Midland for a while, trying to find the perfect place that we could afford, right?
Yes, both.
Again,
now we're learning business.
We're learning
we need
business.
to be able to afford it.
Yeah, exactly. So we stumbled upon this building that we're in, so the Ashland Plaza. And, we didn't have a lot of money to be able to spend on a space, but the realtor took us upstairs and that, above where Live Oak is today, and showed us this space that we could call, our own studio. And, it was one of those real fixer-uppers, and the ceiling was on the floor, but it had beautiful natural light, and it was like, we'll take it.
I love your optimism.
Well, you can always see the
okay.
diamond.
We can fix that, right?
Yeah, everything is fixable, right? So you saw the diamond in the rough. And so that's really where the story began for us. And that was where the first real step in faith happened, because you kind of, when you're first starting out and you're doing it in the safety of kind of out of your home, you're still, even though you're invested because you had to purchase equipment and all those things, you can back out pretty easily.
Right.
But taking on your first lease,
oh,
definitely is more.
I'm
it commits
obligated,
you.
right?
You're
Yeah,
obligated,
yeah.
exactly.
Oh,
Yep.
oh.
So I would say that was like the first brave thing,
Okay.
deciding to move out of our home. And then, things were going well. One of the things that kept coming to the surface as I was, again, I often refer to it through my lens, right? And that has been the gift that photography has been in my life, is that it's allowed me the ability to kind of sit back and watch people see. I would say not watch, but see. And when I say see, it's like I really enjoy the opportunity and the gift that people have given me to see who they are, right? To see their beauty, to see their worth, to see their stories. And a lot of times what I would see is just that lack of community. People feel lonely. At the same time, I was a young mom trying to do that, trying to work and be a mom. So I also felt lonely. And so I remembered also, really seeing just people feeling a sadness and a lack of connection. And so for me, it was like, well, I always loved hosting events. So we would start just hosting events in the studio. That then allowed us to take over another part of the studio too. So we expanded.
So you're renting at this time?
Renting.
So you're just renting in this current building?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And we're just kind of growing the container.
Okay, keep
right?
going.
Yep. So,
moving your tent stakes.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep. So, and I realized I really loved that. So I really loved creating places for people to connect. And that was something that, and the photography was good. The videography was good. Watching people, capturing their memories, allowing them to relive their moments, right? But I'm doing a lot of event stuff, right? So I love the way you feel the conviviality of an event, right? So I wanted to do more of that. And that was really, I think, where that ignited in me, that I could see how people were when they were together, right? Like the laughter and the joy and the connection. And so I wanted to create more spaces for that to occur.
So is that when your switch really flipped?
I think so.
You're like, oh, I'm starting to see the connecting pieces.
Yeah.
There's more of a light on my path.
Yes.
And it really sounds like it stirred up what was already natural about you.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you were starting though, how many fears did you need to push through during the startup phase till you got to where that switch was really turned on?
I think a lot.
Okay.
I think a lot. The fear of failure. There's, something common to entrepreneurs is an imposter syndrome.
Oh.
So, and anytime you're saying you're something, right? So when you say you're a professional, it's like you got to be it, right? And what if I disappointed people? What if what if they didn't like what I had to offer? And I think that's a continuous theme through everything I've ever done. Is what if they don't like what I have to offer? That even makes me tear. But that's still to this day the fear.
Sure.
What if I can't deliver on? And I have high ideals, so I'm a person with really high ideals, and I kind of set myself up because
sometimes we light our own fire.
Well, right, like
right?
I say these things, like I mean, even like with Coffeehouse, like coffee, love people. Well, that's a pretty high ideal to say love because that encompasses all sorts of things.
Absolutely,
and so
people can be really messy.
Yes.
Right, and then people can have standards which you perceive to be higher than yours, which are already really high. So that gap.
Yes.
You're
always
about
trying to close that. Yeah. And I think that was the early years of doing business was a lot of that feeling of that. What if we're not good enough? What if we can't deliver?
Wow.
And so I think that you overcome it by doing it. And one of the things that I've learned about confidence is confidence comes from doing it. Right? You do it. You give the best you can. You do it with excellence, and then you kind of get a little more courage for the next time. Right?
Sure.
And I don't think it ever gets easier. Like it gets quieter.
Okay.
So the little voice that's telling you you're not good enough just gets quieter because now you can kind of argue with it and say,
but I
have done these things, right?
Right.
So and the people liked it, so it must be okay.
So,
yeah. I don't think it ever goes away. I mean, I think that I still really struggle with that. That little voice is like it's not good enough. Do better.
Absolutely.
And then I think too, I mean, just, for anybody who's a mom, you have this burden to make sure you're not making decisions that are going to put your family at risk. And so that leads me to the next part, the next chapter.
Okay. So what happened? So you were able to start shoving those voices down. Yep. But then new voices came up.
Yep.
Right. What were they telling you?
Well, I think the new voices, because the next decision we made. So I think as you're shoving them down, you get a little more brave, right? So we were getting a little more brave.
You have some wins in your win column.
Exactly.
Right. And then you're crossing over to what was next. So
what was next? Then in 2013, the building became available, the entire building to purchase.
Okay. Yeah. What were the visceral responses that came out first?
So first was we have no business doing something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. The first response was, I remember, Daisha, my very good friend, looking at us both and saying, "You two need to buy the building." And I remember just being like, thought that was such an audacious thing to say. Like us, like why would we ever do that?
Right.
Like this is huge. Like this is not. We can't do this.
Right.
And then it moved from that knee-jerk reaction of I don't think we're good enough to do this thing to I'm a person of faith. We're people of faith, and we don't make decisions based on how we feel about something.
Yeah, feelings can be very misleading.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was like, okay, well, we'll pray about it. And so that's what we did. Now we did. I will say that my knee-jerk reaction was, I don't want to. It seems scary, but there was still a part of me that also could see how that would align with some of those stirrings that we have had for like building community. So you have this like this love, right? This this little fire that was ignited. That I love community. I want to bring people together. There's a quote by Andy Stanley that I love. And it's like a guiding quote for me. It says, whatever it is that breaks your heart, go and solve that problem. And for me, the thing that has broken my heart my whole life, growing up in a family that has had a lot of mental illness, is depression, depression that is exasperated by isolation. And so for me, like, even though my first reaction to buying the building was, I don't want to do it, that seems scary, I knew that what we could do through having this building would be to help in our little way, our little corner of the world, help solve loneliness, right?
So then what did it feel like when that light shone down on that with truth? Like, what did that feel like? Like, okay, here's the voices. They're telling me I'm not good enough and I can't do it. But then that had to have, how did that feel when that truth was revealed to you, what you could do?
I think peace. I would say the first indicator that you're on the right path is peace. When you have a peace that this is going to be scary. It's going to be hard. But I felt like for me in my relationship with God, it was like, but I'm going to give you what it takes to do what I've asked you to do.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it switches to, I don't want to say no to something like that. So.
So the fear switched.
Yes.
What if I said no?
Right. Yeah.
Wow. So kind of analyzing it.
Yeah.
So here's the first fear.
Yeah.
But here's the truth. And then here's the other fear.
Yeah.
What if we don't?
Right.
Wow. That's a great process to go through when you are, because we're all faced with fears, right? But you've got to go through them.
Yeah.
Don't stay with the first one.
Right.
Because it's usually a liar.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So walk me through what that looked like. Oh my gosh. What if we don't purchase it?
Yeah.
Or what if we do?
I think that, to be really honest, hindsight is 20/20, right?
So
it's easy for me to say now, like, what if we didn't? But, if we're talking 2013, right? 3 years before
ago.
Live Oak was even, it come about yet. I don't think that I really even knew. It really was blind faith and naivete, right? So, I think that's part of it, right?
For sure.
And it may be even, and I have, my story goes on to foolishness, right? So it's interesting because it can feel like almost like in hindsight, I have all sorts of emotions too, where it's like, I cannot believe we did that. It had to have been only a God thing because I can't believe we did it. We're brave enough to say yes. Took a lot of even understanding and research, right? So you're like, real estate, you're having to read books on that. You're having to get ready. Like, it's just in time preparation for something like that,
Next.
Yeah, next. Yeah, so now it's like, here's the next challenge. It's almost like a choose your adventure type of thing, and again, it's like you could go this way or you could go this way.
Yeah, door A or B.
Right, and we chose A, but then that's still like all these different decisions had to be made, But we had, each other, right? So
you talk about we. That's what I wanted to circle around.
Yeah.
Difference maker.
Yeah.
When there's a we.
Yes.
Wow.
Right. We weren't alone, right?
Yeah.
We had each other. We had, our friends and family supporting us and cheering us on. Our very first tenant was Star Gust, who would later be instrumental in the development of Live Oak.
Yes.
So I had everything. We were graced with everything that we needed. And even shortly after that, it was Molly Souls who came in, Molly Clary, who came in with Haven Counseling. And so it was like, as soon as we decided to do it, everybody, the puzzle pieces just started,
like the arc, right?
Yeah, like all the puzzle pieces started to fall together,
Absolutely.
So, and it's not that it wasn't still terrifying. In fact, that's part of the story too, is that for 2 full years after, and I just feel like this is an important thing to say because sometimes you do the right thing or you do the thing you're supposed to do, and then you still have regret, right? You still have this after you did it, like, oh my goodness, this is really scary. And so I really struggled with panic attacks and anxiety for like 2 full years after we made the decision.
Okay. Was it from doubt? Like, where was that coming from?
Yeah, it's like the realization of the bigness of what we decided to do was in the weight of it, right? So then, you start to, like, your logic brain kind of moves in and it's like, you have 12 furnaces. And I remember that first winter, just imagining, what if they all broke at the same time? Every snowfall cost $300, and it was so something that, here I love the snow. I grew up in Florida. I love the snow. But I remember that first couple of years, every time it snowed, it would represent dollar bills falling from, so it was like, it would just be everything would just be screaming at me, like that. This is expensive. Can't do it.
So your lens really changed. And I love that you're such a beautiful photographer. But when you're clicking through, right, when things are out of focus, right, you're not seeing the full picture. Yeah. And we have such a small window that we're looking through, right? We have such finite brains, right? And the logic that, well, this doesn't make sense why you did this, right? But you were pushing forward. Yeah. So how did you use your people? It sounds like you surrounded yourself with wise counsel. Yes. How important is that? So we're talking to listeners that may be just starting a business or they're in it for a few years. Like, tell me about that circle. Let's circle around the circle. How important was that for you when the voices started?
Yeah, I think that is probably the most critical part of it all. To seek the counsel of many, right? So, making sure that, so my husband's father was an awesome help to us. He came, and did the whole, he did the walkthrough of everything. So I know that was really helpful to kind of have him. We often would seek people who had done something scary before us, so we have family that has owned real estate. And so, they were able to help us, bounce ideas off of it or tell us what to be, what to kind of look out for. And then, most importantly, are your friends, right? Your people who you feel like you can say, like, look, this is really scary. Will you pray for me?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I did was then, because I realized what I was doing also not a lot of people had done. So then that it's like you have your friends and you have your family, but then when you're feeling all the emotions of it and you're looking around and you're like, I did have moments where I didn't know who I could talk to because it was so out of what is normal, really,
right. You're like, where I have a different thing.
Yeah.
And nobody has.
Right. So who could relate to this?
Sure.
Right?
So how did you find that?
Yeah. So that, and you've been an awesome friend because, and it's one of those things where it was like, that's why I think when, it was like when we've connected, it's like, yes, you get it. You get it. You get every little thing,
we understand each other.
Yeah. And so, but it was in 2014 that it was, I was really struck by that. Like, if I feel this way, if I feel this sense of loneliness in this brave entrepreneurial journey, if I feel like I just jumped off a ledge, I had just read a book called Free Fall to Fly. And if I'd felt that way, surely I'm not alone. And so again, that see a need, fill a need. If I'm feeling this way, maybe there are other women out there that also feel this way. And maybe I can, with my space, because I have so much of it.
I have lots of it now.
Lots of that. Maybe I could create a space for these women to come together and like kind of huddle together, and encourage one another and remind them,
right.
You're not alone. We'll be here cheering you on. We'll be here to help you. We'll be here if you need somebody to talk to about something that you don't know how to talk to with anybody else in your life. So that's the group Brave. We started that in 2014.
Wow. Almost 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many women do you think have went through the Brave journey?
That's a really good question too. I would say like 12 to 15 every year. So it's often, it's a little bit
so
like.
over 100.
Yeah. Yeah. And Yep. So,
wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been really good. It's been a really good support group.
The gift that you've given them, and unfortunately, it's hard because the gift we're going to give them is lessons and feelings and truth, right? Sometimes those are what we do have to go through so we can gift them to somebody, right? We learn from failure.
For sure.
And when you can learn from other people's failure, it's a lot cheaper.
Yes.
Right? So we're talking over 100 women. And if you just did the math on failures alone, you being so open to share that, because that's a small group, right? Where you can be very open and honest, which you are anyway. But when you walk them through that journey, what does it do for you to see that happen?
I think that the hardest part about pain is when you feel like it doesn't have a purpose, right? When you just don't understand it, you can't make sense of it.
Why?
Right, why? Yeah. Exactly. But as soon as you can connect your pain to a lesson or a treasure that you need to tuck away in your little treasure box, because at some point you're going to need to give that to somebody else, then it changes how you embrace challenge. It changes how you process painful experiences, right? Because now you can see, okay, this is a lesson I have to learn. And it is an experience that I'm having that's going to develop in me understanding and empathy, right? Like it's something that I can't get any other way.
No.
And I want these treasures. I want these treasures to have, to be able to help somebody else. And so I have to go through some of these hard things.
Definitely.
And that's, been a lot of the experiences we've had. It's like, well, Here we
go again.
Yeah.
I'm about ready to earn a new tool. Because really, when you are at the stage we are in entrepreneurial paths and businesses, we have a pretty big toolbox.
Yes.
But the goal is to share those tools. Because when you first start out, you have a hammer. Yeah. So when you have a hammer, everything's a nail.
Yes. Right?
Yep. I just have one tool.
Yep.
And it's so filling because those tools, I don't see them as brand new shiny tools. Right. They are beat up hammers and screwdrivers and levels. And you're like, here, I earned this tool, but I want to share it with you. I love that. I need to bring in an old toolbox. I have this old rusty toolbox that makes me think of this story. So brave, over 100 female entrepreneurs, helping them on their journey. Everything seems to be going pretty good, but then you have next steps. Like you started Brave. Then what was your next entrepreneurial step?
Yeah. So the next one would be the decision to put a coffee house in the building. So
how did that come about? I mean, you went from photography to developing people, which I think you've always done. I can imagine you even as a preschooler in preschool class helping kids. But where did that idea come from? Did it get deposited in?
Well, that was, we, my husband and I, we met in the restaurant industry, and we ourselves love hospitality. It's something I was always on a meal ministry. We always have people over for dinner, right? Like it's something that's kind of our thing. We like to cook together and we like to take care of people. And so, and because of our history in working together in the hospitality industry, I remember we would, so my husband went to Michigan State and, for chemical engineering, but we would spend our evenings in coffee shops. And I remember enjoying those times together and saying, someday we're going to open a restaurant or a cafe together.
Really?
Yeah.
So that seed was a long time ago.
Yes. Yeah. I would say that was back to 1995. Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was something that, we know we like to do together. Okay. So we really enjoy, hosting things.
You do. You guys are really good at it.
Yeah.
We've got to enjoy that. But,
it's like my favorite thing in the world to be working on food prep and hearing people in another room laughing, so it's
the best.
And that's exactly what a coffee house is. I just love it.
Wow. So what were the steps? So was there fear then with that one?
There was, I would say it was, this is why we did this.
More of a light bulb.
Yes. It was more of like the revelation was, it was finally illuminated, right?
The puzzle pieces.
Yes.
Just like, that's the picture.
Yeah. Yeah. It all made sense. You know, it made sense to have, to even have walked through my own personal season of incredible, like, anxiety, right? Feeling like I wanted to be isolated. To that, I think I needed that passion to propel me to the next the next big thing. Because then it wasn't, so when you have a conviction about something and you have a passion about something, it jumps over your own personal fear, right? I heard a quote by Maya Angelou that hope and fear can't coexist,
They can't.
right? Right. So when you have a passion to do something and you have hope, like you think this idea will actually help solve that for other people, then your own fear about it gets really quiet because you have to. You at that point you just have to do
loud,
it.
right?
Yeah. So it switched from being, I mean, yes, it was daunting. There were a lot of really practical things that had to happen, to get to finally being open, to be able to open doors. But it was a different challenge.
It sounds like it was very different.
Yeah. It felt like, okay, this is what we're here for.
Yeah, absolutely. The why was being revealed.
Yes.
Right. When you're going through all those pain points and the growth and the journey, you don't get to see the why. And sometimes we never will.
Right.
Right. But you had the joy of that being revealed.
Yes.
So 2016, you opened Live Oak.
Yes. Yep.
Wow. And it's been great ever since, right?
Well, sure. It's all rosy, rainbows, it's just all sunshine.
So things are going well. The coffee house is open. You think, we're balanced right now. Yeah. Did you ever have a phone call, a thought, something happened that just threw you sideways?
Yeah.
When you thought all was well?
Yeah. I think that there are... there's a lot of little things like that. Fortunately, and maybe this is just my own self-protection, I don't remember specific things necessarily. I mean, you have the occasional, like, if you ask me that question, I'm like, I guess I do remember, a note from an email from somebody who, there was a misunderstanding,
Sure.
And because I think that's what's so hard too, is I'm high harmony, high peacemaker, the kind of person who wants to stay in my own lane. Like, do not, my whole mission is to bring people together, and create good connection and,
you
love.
You don't want to disconnect.
Right. I mean, so I would never want to do anything that would, like, hurt somebody else.
Right.
But, or disappoint somebody. And I think if that's a theme, right? I mean, to disappoint somebody. But when that happens, it's like, shoot, no.
What am I doing?
What happened? Yeah. What did I do?
Yeah.
And so, there's been moments like that. And I've learned that good communication is really critical, in times like that.
Which way? With your circle or with the person who had an issue?
Right, the person who had an issue. And I actually think that is a common theme through the entire mission of the coffee house, is to share a cup of coffee or share a drink with somebody, and you see each other's humanity, right? So so all the things that the misconceptions, the misunderstandings kind of fade away because you actually get to see a person, and you get to see. I like to say the Imago Dei reflected in another, right? So I think that is. So I've had several opportunities to actually practice that, So
Great,
again, good, right? I mean, conflict resolution, as much as I'm conflict averse, I'm glad that I've actually had to experience some of those things so that I know how to, I'm not a master at it, but you can navigate it a little bit, more
For
easily.
sure.
Or I can at least help somebody else maybe navigate something, because I've been like, well, when this happened with me, this is how I handled
Absolutely.
it.
And those lessons, another tool.
Yep.
Right? You went through the hard stuff.
Yeah.
When you're in the hospitality industry,
Yes.
it can be brutal.
Yeah.
There can be, let's just say there's many opportunities to let people down.
Yeah.
right? Because you're serving them from the time the sun comes up to the time the sun goes down, right? There's so many interactions. And for something to not go well, we're putting ourselves out there, right, for that to happen. So when you say you're high harmony, so a problem comes up, like, are you, what is your first response now compared to a decade ago?
That's another really good question, because it has gotten better. You know, I feel like the sky is falling. If there was anything said about, you know, me or my staff or my husband, or, you know, if it was any negative feedback, was just like, I would kind of feel this franticness inside of me, like, I got to make it right. I got to, you know, fix it. And while I still have that desire, it doesn't shoot me straight to, you know, like that 10 on the scale of like stress, right? Now I can kind of take it in a little bit, like, and put some context around it. Ask questions, be more curious. I think that my knee-jerk reaction is always, it's my fault. It's something I've done wrong. It's an indictment on somehow my leadership, my abilities, right? So my first response always to feedback is like, shoot, I blew it. Like, we did something wrong. We got to make it right. And though I think that's really good, I mean, it's like that bended knee approach, right? I think that's really good. Now I have that same initial reaction, but it doesn't stay. I don't stay there. Now I've learned to kind of get curious and kind of ask questions and try to put it within a context of a lot of good things. You know, where I used to receive that as like the world is ending. You know,
right? It seems so huge.
It did
when you get negative feedback.
Yes, and it
because we take it so seriously. Yes, right.
Because I would lose weeks over it, and now I'll lose a day. You know, so I feel like that's growth, right? Like
that is huge growth,
and especially because I can quickly come up with how can I remedy it? Can I if I can make it right, if I can do a better job, then I can move past it. You know, so so I think that there is a lot of difference in how I responded 10 years ago to now.
For sure,
I've learned to It's not that I don't take myself so seriously, but I've learned to be more gracious with myself and with others, right? So, like, to even understand that even maybe the way they said it wasn't intended to feel like a bomb, right? Like, you know, because I think that reaction wasn't healthy either, that I would be so, because it'd be like once you talk to them, like, well, I was just pointing something out. I wasn't mad at you. We didn't want to ruin your week. You know?
Okay.
Right. So, so I realized kind of the lack of grace even in my response to it, right? Like, like to give others the benefit of the doubt, to be like, oh, this is what they're saying. And it's got we got a good solution for it.
Right.
I feel like, so it's like that whole, you know, another mantra of mine is be gentle with yourself and others. And that's
so important.
Yeah. So that kind of response has helped me to just not get so strung out, you know?
For sure. But you care so deeply.
I do.
I think in the beginning, when you're in the hospitality industry, you can, you're just like, okay, did you want me to buy you a new car? Do you want, right? You're about ready to hand over the farm when there's an issue, and then learning different lenses to look through that, staying curious, vital. But we learned a quick little differentiator when somebody would give us feedback, if it's preference or quality. Did you not prefer something, or was our quality, because that's on us.
Right.
So that just helped give us a first little filter but that was, you've got to figure out how you can progress. You said you've had so much growth in the past decade, right? And I think that's the key is, how do we grow? Because as entrepreneurs, there's no grass growing under our feet, right? We've got to keep growing, and we're leading. So you are such a beautiful example to your team. You are passionate about them. What do you think they've learned from you as an entrepreneur? Because you're very open too. Right? You don't, not everything's all roses and unicorns and puppies and, right? There are some tough things. How do you share that with your team?
I think Well, first and foremost, when people think about me, my hope is that they think grace. I hope to model the same grace I've received in my life.
You do. You so do. It's such a beautiful, it's intrinsic, it's innate in you. And I think when you model that, it's because you know how much you need it. Yeah. Right? You can extend something that you know the brevity of your need for it. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Like, we're going to make mistakes. We can't be perfect.
Gosh,
we
so
have
many.
high ideals. I think, we have in Live Oak, we have 3 phrases: live with intention, focus on the good, and love your neighbor. And to me, those 3 kind of encompass how we need to live our lives. Like, be intentional, right? So don't be haphazard.
Nope, just throwing caution to the wind,
Right.
whatever. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
And integrity, living a life of integrity, is making sure your values align, right, to your actions, right?
Absolutely.
So we want that, right? That's what we're striving for. But unfortunately, we're humans, right? Fortunately or unfortunately, right? We're humans. And so we're not going to always hit it, right? We're going to miss the mark. And so when we do, we have to be quick to extend grace to ourselves and others. Focus on the good, right? So what are things that we're doing well? Like, how can we redirect and focus on what is good, or what is good about the failure, right? What can we learn from it, right? So I would say that I'm not naturally a focus on the gooder. Like, I would say I'm a noticer, which means I also notice all the bad, which is why I'm a problem solver, right?
There we go. I love
right.
it.
Right. I mean, it's like there's a lot of issues, but let's not focus on those because they're not very productive, right?
Right.
So, like, let's keep focusing on what is good, what we can do, and loving our neighbor as ourselves, right? So I feel like when we do that, when we're always trying to consider how somebody else feels, like being in their shoes and how would we want to be treated, right?
Right.
We, with my team, we focus on both the golden rule and the platinum rule, so
Tell me more about the platinum rule.
So the platinum rule is treat others how they want to be treated. So because I think sometimes we can, if we're just doing, how we would want to be treated, we can be like, well, that wouldn't bother me, so it shouldn't bother you.
We could be way off.
Right. Yeah. So really trying to be a good listener and actually pay attention. Well, how do they need to be loved right now? Like, not what do I need, but what do they need? And how can I best serve them? And I think that, I've tried to do that, as far as modeling that. It's not easy. I think that would be another one of those really nice things, right? Where this is what we talk about. This is our standard. And it doesn't always happen, right? And I think that would be like, that's what we're always working to be better at, but that is the standard. So
it's definitely something you model very well. Right. But the beautiful thing about grace is that because you model it so well, you also need to distribute it and also accept it, right, from others, right? Yeah. It's not linear, right? It is so, it's such a beautiful way. I love being here. I love how thoughtfully cared I feel for here. But you model that, right? With that, things also, like we are going to have failures. Yeah. We're going to miss the mark, right? That lens of, and then when we do, we're going to learn from it and we're going to extend grace. And you do that so very well. So what about our entrepreneur who is struggling with showing themselves grace? What would you tell, how would you encourage and inspire those young entrepreneurs, maybe in that startup phase, that first 3 years? How would you let them know what they need to do for themselves? Like, what would you tell them?
Yeah. I would tell them not to quit. I would remind them that if they have like a call, if there's something inside of them that they really feel like the world needs, right? To keep going, that it is going to be hard, right? There are going to be challenges. We don't have to be good enough. We get ready just in time. I think that it seems almost counterintuitive to say it, but humility isn't. It's like, I think instead of like trying to talk yourself in that you're good enough, you're strong enough, and all those things. Humility is like recognizing what I'm not perfect. Like I have a lot of things to learn and grow, but I will have the grittiness, the tenacity, the fortitude to do what it takes to get ready for it. So it's okay if you don't feel ready. Like thank that. Like be grateful for every opportunity that comes your way to learn something new.
Yeah.
I think that we think we have to have arrived, and none of us have. Like we're still learning, and I think that's kind of the misconception is like when I get there, then I will have had it all figured out.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that it's like no, when you get there, you're just going to have a whole new set of challenges that you have to learn. Yeah. But if you can, approach life like a learner, like a student. Another one of my favorite proverbs is. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I love that because that's how my journey has been. Like I haven't always known exactly how to handle something, but when you have to handle it, be humble, like seek to understand, read books, ask advisors, get a mentor, right? Do the work that it takes to learn something. But at the end of the day, be kind to yourself.
So much kindness is needed.
You're just human, and I think we put so much expectation on ourselves. And I think that when we talk about, when you had asked me kind of, I think earlier, but my greatest fear, and oftentimes your greatest fear reveals like kind of your expectation of yourself. And my greatest fear is that I will let people down. Right. And it's like you're so afraid of that. But at the end of the day, we will. So we don't.
You will. You will let people down.
Not perfect. So we will. Yeah. And that's okay. How will you get through it? What will you learn from it? And I think that I think it's that kind of like always like aligning your self-expectation with like humility, right? Like how do I kind of know, okay, I'm going to do the very best I can. Right. I'm going to love with my whole heart. I'm going to do this as passionately and with as much excellence as I can. But at the end of the day, I have to just rest in grace.
Right. And you gave your part.
Yeah.
Right. It's not always on us.
Right.
Very rarely is it always all of it. Just the whole picture does not rest on us. In that you need to bring your loaves and your fish. Yeah. Right. You don't have to be the multiplier. Right. You don't have to carry things across the finish line. Yeah. You have to bring all your gifts and your talents and your passions. Yeah. Right. And you do that so very well. Reneé, thank you for sharing your story, your journey. I love how open you are about fears and failures, but your fortitude is so inspiring. And I love that our listeners can hear that in you. I love that they have the opportunity. So where can they come find you? Like virtually or in person? Like where would you find all of your businesses?
Well, the ashmanplaza.com would have like that.
All of them.
Yeah, have, and that is something that I always want to put out the invitation to get in touch with me, and I'd love to have coffee. So it's something that I love. I love a good coffee or tea in this case.
This is cinnamon tea. It's fantastic.
It is good. Yeah, I even get a little coffeeed out around here. So the tea is really good. But it would be my joy and my pleasure to talk with anybody over a cup of coffee.
Oh, and I agree. So thank you so much, Reneé. I really appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.